Hi, welcome everyone. We are doing another episode of Pages Promotions Virtual Book Festival Autumn 2020. This is a production of Indie Reads TV, and we find our home on CNM TV in Troy, Michigan. We are super happy today. We've got people from all around the country and from Canada, in fact. So this is just super fun. Today, we are focusing our author spotlight on Annemarie. She's going to help me pronounce her name later, but Annemarie Pedersen, and we're going to talk about her book, and she's going to do a little reading, and we're going to have some conversation. So welcome, everybody. Thanks, Annemarie, for coming. Will you help me with your name? I really did not want to butcher it.
It's okay. It's Annemarie Schiavi Pedersen. And it's been
Okay.
butchered a lot, so it's okay.
I wasn't sure about where the I and the A went.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We're going to have a really good time. Annemarie, to start, would you just give us some background about who you are and how you began your writing journey?
Well, hi, everybody. First, I want to thank Diana for putting on this virtual book tour. And yeah, I started my writing journey. I was features editor at the Oakland Press in Pontiac, Michigan for quite a while. And I have a real heavy background in journalism and reporting, but I've always, like most journalists, reporters, really wanted to write a novel. So I kind of left that all behind and shot the dice and said, I'm gonna be a novelist now, from now on. So I
good for you.
learned everything I could about, structuring novels and writing novels, and it took a long time. It took 10 years until I got my first book published. But I wrote 2 other novels that did nothing. So the third one was a charm, and I had learned a lot. So here we are today, and it was worth it. It was a lot of self-doubt, a long journey, but I'm glad I stuck with it because this is a blast.
It is a blast. I think it's absolutely the best occupation anybody could have, but I'm slightly biased. I started out in journalism as well, so I know what that transition's like, and I applaud you for making the leap. Congratulations. When was your book published? How long ago?
My book was published this year, Celestina's Burnings. It came out here. Oh, here she is. January 1st, perfect. It debuted, and everything was fun, fun and roses, and there was events, and then the pandemic, struck.
And then a pandemic, yeah.
Everything just kind of, like everything else, the world just kind of.
Well, congratulations on your debut release. That's exciting news. Good for you.
Thank you.
I would love it if you could give us a small synopsis of the book. And then after that, if you'd like to take us into your reading, and then we'll do questions and answers afterward.
Sounds good. Yeah. Celestina's Burnings. It's a historical novel with strong romantic elements. And it's the story of a young witch hunter who battles her own demons and uncovers a wicked truth. Kirkus Reviews has called Celestina's Burnings an engaging tale of an Italian witch scare. So the passage I'm going to read is from the second half of the first scene. But I'm going to take a minute now to explain to you what happened just before when I start to read. The year is 1491 in Florence, Italy, Renaissance Florence. When we meet Celestina, she's just finished a year-long period of mourning for her papa, who was killed trying to save a beautiful witch, a death that Celestina needs to avenge, but she doesn't exactly know how. Meanwhile, she's itching to begin her life. She dreams of finding and marrying a young sculptor, and she just wants to throw out her black dress of mourning and start fresh with something pretty and orange. Against her grandmother Simona's orders, Celestina has now just dashed out of the bakery, still in her depressing black dress, to check out the new riding on her street, the Via Scaglia. She runs through a cloud of bonfire smoke where she discovers another black dress burning on a stake. Right then, the cobblestones beneath her feet begin to shake. A holy army riding black stallions is charging down her street. Among the Holy Army, called the Reform, there is one who stands out, a cloaked religious figure, the only man riding a stallion of pure white. The district marshal introduces him as Fra Brucker, the vice supreme knight of the Reform, and says he's an Austrian. Well, Celestina has never seen an Austrian and wonders if they all are as white as ghosts and bear the jutting jaw of the Habsburgs. Celestina and the rest of the people are told by the marshal to look down and bow their heads in respect. Okay, so now I'm going to start reading from the book at the place where the marshal tells the people they can look up. This is what Celestina sees. Fra Brucker had tugged back his hood to reveal a jaw that was square and refined. There was a pearly glow to his skin that contrasted with his hair, a mane so black it bore the tint of blue. Next to her, a pair of younger girls, skinny but bearing the hint of womanhood, giggled. It was about Fra's striking looks. Celestina glared at them until they shrank. After they acted sufficiently put in their places, she glanced at the replica of Donatello's bronze statue of David. It stood proud in front of the silk shop across the street. Now, if it were Donatello, the greatest sculptor of all time, sitting on Fra's white horse, she'd lose her morning biscotti. She'd even consider losing her modesty. But for a religious like Fra, no matter how bellow, she had no loving heart. Never. She could never feel for a man of God that way. Still, she had the sense his focus was on her. She glanced up and stifled a gasp. He was staring at her. Gray blue eyes under his lantern brow glowed like the hottest hue in a whisper of fire. It teetered at the edge of indecent. She looked fast at her feet. His attention made her ears burn. She counted, 1, 2, 3, 9. Surely he'd be done looking. And 10. At 10, she looked up. His leer pinned her. She squirmed in her slippers. Did he never blink? She tipped her shoulder to create a barrier of coldness between them. A smart smile crossed his lips. Her rebuff was not as subtle as she supposed. He tapped his horse's neck twice, and the stallion stepped up and over like a bishop in a game of chess. She stumbled back a step, a pawn in retreat. He smirked, and then he faced the marshal. Now that his attention was off her, she dared to finally breathe. The Reform has chosen Florence, the most important city on the earth, to begin its mission to cleanse the world of witchcraft, the marshal proclaimed, and Fra Brucker will lead the fight. Celestina bounced on her toes. Never had she imagined there existed a holy army to save the people from the witches and to help her save Papa's soul. It was an answer to her prayers. Cheering voices bounced off the buildings. Faces beamed. The people were feeling the same way. She dared to peek at Fra, not with the hope that he'd look back, but to gauge his effect. She wanted to make certain that he understood the people stood with him, but his face was as expressionless as a 1,000-year-old stone bust of a Roman Stoic. She scratched her head, and an Italian in a similar position would be prancing about on his horse while waving. But Fra's hand simply cradled the horn of his blue velvet saddle, and he dismounted. At full stretch, he was taller than any Italian she knew. His chin was higher than the withers of his horse. He looked to be about 23 or thereabouts, perhaps 5 years her senior. He rolled the cuff of his sleeve. Lean muscles on his arms twitched. She flipped a lock of hair over her eye and cast her gaze in the direction of the black dress burning on a stake in the street. But not a shadow remained. There wasn't a hint of leftover ash either. "What are you looking for, Fraulein?" asked Fra Brucker. The harsh sound of his voice was like a bristle brush scrubbing the inside of her ears. His eyes, a set of smoky sapphires, were calculating. "I'm waiting," he said, tapping his chin. I seek the answer to why the dress burned. Celestina prayed no one noticed the tremor in her voice, but the people snickered. Her cheeks reddened. No one was safe from outright derision on the Via Scala. Fra's silence, however, dangled over her like a nun's threatening paddle. She stared at the ground, heart beating in her ear. Look again, he said. She regarded where the black dress had been burning. A fresh black dress replaced the old one. She looked from side to side. The people, too, appeared astonished. As you can see, there are no lack of witches or their dresses in Florence, said Fra. All nodded obediently. So what do you think, Fraulein? Cella's head snapped around. Think? Thinking often brought trouble when it came to a religious. She preferred if he simply told her what to think, saved time and a punishing trip to the confessional. Yes, think. Fra hiked up a silky eyebrow. Do you have the stomach to be a witch hunter? He asked. She was dizzy with the idea. I didn't know such a formal opportunity existed for a woman, a humble baker such as myself, she said. The reform is a progressive movement of the people. A good woman is part of the people, yes? Do you have the will, Fraulein? She swallowed hard. For Papa's soul, the answer was absolute. I am ready, she said. She detected a bit of mischief in his smile. Let's see if you can pass a little test, he said. She wiped her sweating hands against her skirt. What sort of test? He sized up the hanging dress. Do you have the fortitude to burn it? The marshal forced a handle of a burning torch into her hand. The powerful flame shook the grip. She needed 2 hands to hold on. Before anything went wrong, she touched the tip of the blaze to the hem. Whoosh! The dress erupted in an orange blaze. The very act of setting the dress aflame emboldened her. With the power of this flame, I begin my journey to search, find, and destroy the witches of Florence. I swear this on the soul of my father, Alessandro di Capria. Her heart, which only this morning suffocated under a cloak of darkness, lightened with purpose. Before this day, she'd yearned for an orange dress to wear and a ragazzo with the shoulders of a sculptor to love. But the reform had now changed everything. She now had one mission, to capture 5 witches and burn their dresses. She could entertain no distractions. It would take all her guile to succeed. The end. For now.
Well done. Thank you very, very much. For those of you who don't know, this is applause in sign language. So we do that. Thank you so much. That's a really incredible reading. Now, again, I have another book on my TBR list.
Thank you.
Everybody, feel free to turn on your microphones. And it's at this point in the program where you can ask questions and offer comments. And Annemarie will entertain all comers.
I just really like the way you describe things.
Thank you.
It just, I can really see it.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, it is tremendously visual. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Go ahead, Luba.
You're a woman after my own heart. I did graduate studies in the Italian Renaissance.
Oh my God. Oh, I should have been talking to you for my research.
But it's been decades since I studied it, but it's such a fascinating time. So, you know, the setting.
Well, I think something very interesting that I learned about this, this witch hunting in Renaissance Florence. When you think of us in America, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, you know, during the Salem witch trials, put to death 19 people. But in Western Europe through that time, tens of thousands of people were tried, tortured, killed, mostly women, but some men who were like called wizards for being witches. And so, you know, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. It was a brutal time.
Pardon?
It was a brutal time in many.
Oh, it was so brutal. Torture. Yes, it was very brutal.
Yeah, it's kind of a good thing we didn't have television back then, because who knows? Hick.
Oh.
Hick.
Well, maybe if they had television, people would have had something to occupy them other than looking down poor women.
So I'm curious, Annemarie, where did you get what was the impetus for this time period, for this topic? Why this?
Well, I just, love Florence, Italy. And my Italian roots go back to Florence, Italy. And when I'm there, I feel like I just feel like I belong. So I just think I've always been so interested. But who I wanted to write about was not the Medicis or, the mighty. I wanted to write about a normal, an everyday young woman who probably didn't really go too farther than a few blocks outside where she lived her whole life, and how the church was the most powerful thing over all of them.
Yeah, the church was tremendously domineering during that time period.
Yes, it was. And and also when I was little, my grandma lived with us, and I know Janice remembers my grandma, and she was cute, and she was charming, and she was emotional, and she told stories. And I kind of patterned Celestina as maybe what my grandma would have been like if she lived there, and I kept that kind of in my heart. And so I thought, this is how my grandma would probably have reacted. And this time, I don't know, but so I had a lot of ties with my family when I created the story. And I've just always been interested in this like sort of, Joan of Arc, glorious,
right.
Kind of thing. So
very cool. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Jan.
Well, I am.
Hi, Jan.
I would like to say I've known Annemarie since 14, and I always knew she would write a book about Italians. But I thought it was going to be a mafia story.
Oh, yeah.
So when I got this, I was so intrigued, and I love the book, and I bought like 6 copies for all my friends for their birthdays.
Well, thank you, Jan.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think the mafia book's coming. I do have some ideas.
I want to say 2 things. One, I thought your grandma only spoke Italian, so I don't think I ever spoke to her.
Yeah, she only spoke Italian. Except she would do, if there was like since when she had come to this country, if there was an American word like astronaut, she wouldn't say it she would still make it Italian, astronato. I'm like why don't you just say it the way it's made?
Yeah, who needs that extra syllable? Really?
She always added a vowel. My grandmother's very cute.
Yes, she was. And your mom and dad. But how about, now, the question I have for you, Annemarie, is what is your next topic? Do you talk about that? Is that allowed to ask the writer that?
The next book is actually going to be a sort of a continuation of this one. It's going to be interesting. Celestina is going to be in it, but some new characters are going to be in it as well. So let me ask you, is this book a standalone novel, or is it going to be part of a series? Yes, this is definitely a standalone. In fact, the next one can actually even be a standalone as well. But they can also be read together. So
there's some crossover between the two stories.
It's kind of like, yes, yeah.
Awesome.
It's kind of a new way or a different way to kind of do these sequels that I've heard a little bit about in some classes, that you just kind of take someone maybe from over the mountain and continue the story with them,
Sure.
So, which I did, and I really like it because it feels very fresh. And one of the characters that I had to kind of suppress for this book so they wouldn't start taking over, they can take over in the next one. So they can have their arc in the next one.
Yeah, I always find it. I always find it fun when authors, in casual conversations, speak of their characters as if they are whole, flesh and blood human beings, which to us, of course, they are. But I find it really fun because I have friends who are not authors and don't hang out with us, and so they always kind of go, "What? Yeah. Those are real people?" Yes, they're real people.
It is. I have an office. When I go in there, I let them come alive, and then I try to keep them in there. Close the door. You stay in there. I got to go make dinner now. Leave me alone.
Good luck with that. Any other questions or comments for Annemarie? Dave, I can see something churning just behind your eyes. Is there something going on there?
Nothing I can share.
Oh, okay.
Besides, you know I'm shy.
I know you are. I know. Anybody else have questions or comments? Annemarie's going to come back later in the month, and we're going to talk more in depth with her. But I just have one question before we wrap up today's segment. And that is, I have friends who do a lot of research for their writing, and I would imagine that a book set in this time period and on this topic material would require research. So I guess my question for you is, as far as research goes, are you a hunter-gatherer, or are you a steely-eyed missile directed? Like, do you go out into the world and collect stuff while you're writing, or do you have purpose behind your research? And then what's the oddest piece of research that you were able to uncover?
Well, I would definitely say, because I was a journalist, I am steely-eyed. I have an idea and I go for it. I do get, interesting things do come to me, but I actually, in my reading, I actually can pinpoint what I want to go deeper into. It's just kind of how my mind works. And the most interesting thing that I actually researched during this book, where there's witch trials, I actually got this book, unbelievable, that translated these Renaissance witch trials from the Italians. Some academic somewhere got a bunch of these. Now these people were writing in the 1400s. Some little clerk was taking down all this insanity that was going on during these trials. And if you read these translations, they're so discombobulated, and I've never read anything like it, but I just feel like we have grown as a world so much on how we give out information. These poor people I think they had no structure on how they wrote these things down,
Well, that would explain
what I mean. This one's accusing, but they jump all around. Anyway, it was fascinating. So I got the good parts. I got the feel of just how, ridiculous this whole thing was. It sounds
incredibly chaotic, and that would translate into the hysteria and the fear because the record keeping was so chaotic.
Exactly. And
yeah,
exactly. And you've got to think the people that were keeping the records were like the most educated, or
which is kind of scary
kind of thinkers, let alone, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What was going on, beneath them? I mean, like, so
well, yeah.
That it was, the fact that somebody did this was just really a gift to me, because I really felt like I could say any darn thing I wanted, because I couldn't even begin to touch what really went on.
It really gives you a lot of creative license when you see the chaos of the record keeping.
Right. I mean, as long as there's an emotional truth there, like kind of like this kind of thing was happening, I thought I was safe in doing this.
Right.
Well,
that's all you really get with this real historical fiction, is you have to kind of portray an emotional truth.
Sure.
Well, the bulk of the
Leonardo said to
population.
him, but you can kind of gauge what Leonardo was like, and then you just kind of give him a little line, and
Right. Go ahead, Michael.
I would say the bulk of the population was uneducated and illiterate, right?
Right. Oh, yes. The bulk was, yes.
So there was nobody that could really challenge what was written.
No,
Right.
no.
Yeah, they got their news from the town crier.
Yeah. I mean, the only people that could challenge it were the nobility, and they weren't going to say anything in opposition to what they were promoting.
Or the bankers or something. They weren't going to.
Yeah, exactly.
And in Florence was definitely ahead. That was the other thing of the rest of the world, because, the Renaissance. So some people, like maybe Celestina, may have been able to read at like maybe a second grade level. She might have been able to pick up a little bit, or there might have been enough written stuff around that she could have picked something up. And also young girls at that age tended to marry a little later. So they were a little slightly, I think that was the other thing. I thought these were the most, the most progressive ones in the way they thought, let alone, can you imagine going to some little island somewhere and this is going on,
Can't imagine. Thank you so much, Annemarie. I really enjoyed having you.
Coming. Thank you.
I am so excited about expanding our conversation later in the month. I just think it's going to be an awesome conversation. If you go to the Pages Promotions Facebook page, you'll see a link I'm going to post to Annemarie's book there. And you can find out more about the book and perhaps investigate a little bit more before our next conversation with her. I really appreciate everyone coming. We're doing this all month long, learning about new authors, new books. Some of the authors maybe you already know, but you might not know that they have new releases. So come on back and share this time with us. We're having a blast. This is Annemarie Schiavi Pedersen, and she has her I think it's a fascinating story, and I really can't wait to get into talking more about this. I'm just having a blast. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This is Pages Promotions Virtual Book Festival Autumn 2020. We are a production of Indie Reads TV, and we find our home on CNM TV in Troy, Michigan. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you again at tonight's event.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.